Hello everybody, and today I'll be doing an introduction to the Colorless type in the Gym Leader Challenge format. So a quick rundown of what Gym Leader Challenge is, or GLC for short, the main difference from standard being these imposed decklist restrictions, including that you can only play one type of Pokemon in your deck, you can only have one of each card with the same name per deck in your deck, excluding basic energy. Cards printed from black and white onward are legal, so there's a very wide and diverse card pool. And then no rulebox cards or A-Spec cards are allowed, including Radiant Pokemon, Prism Star Pokemon, and multi-prize Pokemon like EX, V-Star, and V. And then I'll leave the ban list in the description below. Colorless is one of the most supported types solely because most of the draw engines end up being colorless Pokemon. So you have a very strong draw engine with Squivit, Bibarel, and Oranguru. Squivit with the Nest Dash lets you, once during your turn, shuffle your hand and put it on the bottom of your deck, and then you draw a card. That's good because it resets your hand, and then you can use Bibarel's Industrious Incisors, which lets you draw until you have 5 cards in your hand, or Oranguru's Instructability, which lets you draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. It also puts cards on the bottom of your deck, so if there's something that you don't want to see again, or you have a really bricky hand that you can't do much with, you can put it on the bottom and draw more cards. Chinchino is another draw Pokemon. With Make Do, you discard a card from your hand to draw 2 cards, just more draw. Beware doesn't see a ton of play, but the Rake It In ability, when you evolve it from one of your Pokemon, you draw 3 cards. Just more draw on top of everything else. Did Unsparse, Runaway Draw. Once during your turn, you can draw 3 cards and shuffle the Did Unsparse back into the deck. Great if you use it correctly, it can make it so you don't deck out. And then again, 3 cards is a lot of cards to be drawing. Dodrio with the Zooming Draw. Once during your turn, you can put a damage counter on the Dodrio to draw a card. It's good card draw, and it puts a damage counter on it, and Ballistic Beak does more damage for each damage counter on it, so it can even become an attacker later in the game once you have some damage built up on it. Pidgeotto with the Airmail. Once during your turn, you can look at the top 2 cards of your deck. You put one into your hand, and you put the other on the bottom of your deck. More draw, doesn't have to focus on you having a limited hand size like Bibarel and Oranguru, and can just get more cards in your hand without making you deck out nearly as quickly because it puts the cards back on the bottom as well. Energy Acceleration Archeops with the Primal Turbo. It's a bit more difficult to get out because it is a fossil Pokemon, but Primal Turbo lets you search your deck for up to two special energy and attach them to one of your Pokemon, and then you shuffle your deck. There's a lot of special energy that Colorless has access to, so just accelerating 2 from deck is very powerful. And then the other special energy acceleration option is Porygon Z with Crazy Code, where as often as you like during your turn, you can attach a special energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon. It's Rain Dance for special energy. It's really cool because you can use it to thin down your hand and then draw cards with Bibarel or Oranguru. Pelipper with the Hearsay, where when you evolve it, you can search either your deck or your discard pile for a supporter and put it into your hand. This is great, lets you get a supporter out early game, and then late game it can function as a second copy of Versus Seeker, getting another supporter back from your discard pile and kind of letting you loop some more resources. Speaking of looping resources, there's Delcatty with the Search for Friends, where when you evolve it, you can put up to 2 supporter cards from your discard pile back into your hand. It's great because you can then scoop up net to pick up the Delcatty, rebench the Skitty, and then next turn you can get 2 more supporters back into your hand. Munchlax with the Snack Search. Once during your turn, you can flip a coin. If you hit heads, you put a card from your discard pile in, and you shuffle it into your deck. And then if you use the ability, your turn ends. It's good if you want to turn 1, play down some cards, and then you can snack search, see if you just get to throw one of those cards back in the deck. It's another controlling option. You get to loop some resources. Fan Rotom might very well be one of the most broken cards to come out for Colorless this past year. Um, Fan Call, once during your first turn, you may search your deck for up to 3 colorless Pokemon with 100 HP or less and put them into your hand. This is insane because it lets you have a good setup as long as you can get Fan Rotom down. And Fan Rotom only has 70 HP, so it's grabbable off of Buddy Buddy Poffin, Level Ball, Nest Ball, Quick Ball. All the Ball Search cards can get it. So you can go Fan Call into 3 more basic Pokemon, or 2 more basic Pokemon, and another support Pokemon to evolve into the following turn. And then Assault Landing, 1 Colorless, it does 70 damage, only if there's a stadium in play. And Colorless has a pretty good amount of stadiums that it can play, so it's just a free attacker that can hit 70, so you could potentially donk your opponent. Herdier with the Treasure Hunt, where when you evolve it, you can put an item card from your discard pile into your hand. Again, looping resources. Colorless Control is a very powerful deck. And then the other Oranguru doesn't see nearly as much play as Instruct, but it's Primate Wisdom, where once during your turn you can switch a card from your hand with the top card of your deck. Just allows you to change your top deck, maybe manipulate it. Colorless has plenty of good attackers, and Snorlax might be one of the best. It's got 150 HP, which is pretty big for a basic, and then it's got the Unfazed Fat ability, where you prevent all effective attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon. It protects it from a good chunk of things, damage counter placement, any attacks that afflict special conditions, protects it from all of that. And then Thumping Snore for 3 Colorless does 180 damage, and the Snorlax is now asleep, and you have to flip 2 coins instead of 1 for sleep, and if either of them are tails, it's still asleep. So it can theoretically fall asleep for a while, but it can also just take massive KO, and then you can play a switch card, you can hit both heads, you can wake it up somehow and just do 180 again. Kangaskhan with a Rally Back, where if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, it does 90 more damage off of base 30. So it's just great revenge attacker. Colorless has 3 different energies that provide 2 Colorless that it can use at its disposal. So a 1 energy revenge attack is pretty good. Cyclizar with the Driving Buddy, for a 3 Colorless, it does 70, and then 70 more damage if you played a supporter card. Obviously, you want to be playing a supporter card every turn, so 140 for 3 is pretty good. And that 140 for 3 just goes to show you how good Snorlax is. 180 for 3 is absolutely insane. Lugia with the Arrow Ball, it does, for 2 Colorless, it does 20 damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. So you load some energy up on Lugia. If your opponent loads some energy up on their active, Lugia can take big KOs. Ditto with the Sudden Transformation ability. It doesn't actually have an attack, but Sudden Transformation lets it use the attacks of your basic Pokemon in the discard pile. So you can use the Snorlax immediately after the Snorlax gets knocked out without needing to recover it, so long as you can get 3 energy on the Ditto. So it's just a pretty cool card that you can play. Bunnelby, this is a card with an ancient trait, and that ancient trait is Barrage, where it can use an attack it has twice. You can change the attack in between, but it can use an attack it has twice. So you can go 1 energy Burrow to discard the top card of your opponent's deck. You can do that twice, or you could use Rototiller twice to shuffle 2 cards from your discard pile back into your deck. Again, another good control piece. This is also good with Technical Machine Evolution, where you can double evolution to either fully evolve into a Stage 2 Pokemon or evolve into 4 total Stage 1 Pokemon. So it's just pretty good overall at being able to use 2 attacks. Slaking with the Lazy ability, where as long as it's in the active, your opponent's Pokemon have no abilities except Lazy. And then Critical Move for 3 Colorless does 160. You have to discard an energy, and it can't attack during your next turn. So ability locking with something that can actually do a lot of damage is very good, and you can use the crazy code Porygon Z to repeatedly put energy on this thing. Ursaluna with the Pete Hunt attack, where you just put 2 cards from your discard pile into your hand. Insane controlling card. It's got 180 HP, so you attach a Luxurious Cape. It's got 280 HP. It's very difficult to knock out in one hit, and it can recycle the cards that you use to heal it with its first attack. Getting into a bit of spread here, you have Hisuian Braviary which for no energy, it does Eerie Cry to put 3 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon that already have any damage counters on them. So as long as you can put damage on the board, Braviary can increase that damage by a lot, and it can't be blocked by Bench Barrier because it's damage counters. Iron Jugulus with the homing headbutt for 3 colorless. It does 50 damage to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon that have any damage counters on them. So again, you need to get damage counters on the board, but 50 damage to 3 things is pretty crazy. Lets you take some easy KOs, lets you clean up after a Hisuian Braviary. And then Spinda is kind of your main way to get damage on the board with Dizzying Spin for 1 colorless. You do 10 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon, and then your opponent's active is now confused. So you put damage all over the board and you confuse them. So if they can't break out of that confusion, you could potentially spin them multiple times. And then you go in with Braviary and Iron Jugulus to clean up everything. Kecleon with the Chroma Shift, where it's the same type as any basic energy attached to it. That's pretty crazy. You can play a weakness box deck that just plays a bunch of different energy cards, and as long as you can accelerate the energy to the Kecleon, it can become that type and hit Pokemon for weakness that it wouldn't normally be able to as a colorless Pokemon. Blissey with Happy Cyclone for 3 colorless, you move an energy from the Blissey to one of your benched Pokemon, and then it does 160 damage. And then Busybody Nurse is also a good reason to play the card, where once during your turn, you can make your active Pokemon recover from all special conditions. So this can help you loop your Snorlax easier, or if they don't KO it and try to trap you in the active off of the coin flips from Thumping Snore, you can completely ignore that, remove your Snorlax's sleep condition, and just Thumping Snore again. Porygon Z with the Buggy Turbo. Once during your turn, you can flip a coin. If heads, you put up to 4 basic energy cards from your discard pile and attach them to the Porygon Z. And then if tails, you discard an energy from the Porygon. And then Energized Attack does 40 damage for each energy attached to the Porygon for 1 colorless. So if you hit heads, you're doing 160 damage immediately. And that's if you don't attach for turn. If you attach for turn, you can do 200. It's not the greatest attacker, but it's pretty fun to work with, especially if you're playing, like with the Kecleon, you want to be playing a bunch of basics energy. So you can go in end game, flip a coin, Buggy Turbo heads, go in, swing for 200. Stoutland with the Intimidating Fang, where as long as it's your active Pokemon, your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks do 30 less damage. And then Knock Away does 120 damage for 3 colorless, and then you flip a coin. If heads, it does 100 more damage. So you can make your opponent do less damage, you can tank a little bit because it's got 160 health, and then you can dish out some pretty solid damage with Knockaway. Finally, Greedent. Like I mentioned before, Squivit was very instrumental piece in colorless existing. So there's this Greedent that can be an attacker later in the game. You can evolve into it, attach a double colorless, and you spill out, which does 6 damage, and then you discard your hand. If you discarded 5 or more cards, you do 150 more damage. So 210 for 2 energy on a Pokemon that evolves from one of your support Pokemon, especially at the end of a game to clean up a final KO, can be very good, especially because Bibarel is guaranteeing that you have minimum 5 cards in hand, and it also guarantees that you won't be left with 0 cards in hand after you use the attack. So, colorless specific trainers, there's Charon's Care, Winona, and Asperita City Gym. Charon's Care lets you put one of your colorless Pokemon that has any damage counters on it and all cards attached to it back into your hand. Great for putting a bulkier Pokemon up and then denying your opponent a prize card and keeping all the cards that you use to charge up that attacker. Winona just gets you 3 colorless Pokemon and you put them in your hand. It's good. It can get you Fan Rotom to get you 3 more colorless Pokemon with under 100 HP. Just pretty good chain starter. And then Asperita City Gym gives each of your colorless Pokemon plus 20 HP. Not great, but it can make your Pokemon tankier, and sometimes that's all you need. Colorless has the benefit of being able to play any basic energy because it requires any basic energy. So you can play cards like Mela, to attach a basic fire from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon if one of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, and then you fill your hand to 6. So it's just more draw. Welder lets you attach up to 2 fire energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon, and then you draw 3 cards. More draw. Mina lets you search your deck for a fairy energy and attach it to one of your Pokemon, and then you shuffle your deck. Guaranteed attachment, searches from deck. It's pretty solid card. And then Volkner lets you get an item card and an electric energy. You reveal them and put them into your hand. It's pretty good. Gets you a bit of setup with an item card. That item card could be Buddy Buddy Poffin, Buddy Buddy Poffin for Fan Rotom into setup. And then the lightning energy you can just attach for turn. So Turbo Colorless, very, very good deck. Uses Snorlax, Lugia, Cyclizar, and Kangaskhan as attackers. This build specifically also has Dodrio in here to add a bit more draw and give a backup attacker. Fan Rotom makes an appearance. Again, insane support Pokemon, adds more damage if you have Stadium in play. And then it's got the engine of Squivit, Bibarel, and Oranguru to just draw you a bunch of cards, go through your deck as quickly as possible, get energy on your attackers, and just swing for KO. Lazy Code uses the Slaking and the Porygon Z. Slaking shuts off all your opponent's abilities, and Porygon Z makes it so that the Slaking has enough energy to attack. This list plays Kangaskhan, Fan Rotom, and Snorlax as sort of like backup attackers. If you prize your Slaking, or when it finally goes down, you can just come up with a Snorlax and take a KO. And then it's running on the Bibarel and Cinccino engine. So Bibarel draws until you have 5, and then Cinccino can put you up to 6 cards in hand after the draw of 2. Colorless has very strong spread game. Like I mentioned earlier, Braviary and Iron Jugulus do a ton of spread damage, and they just need to have damage already on the board. So you use Spinda and this other Kecleon, which for 2 colorless, Lick Whip does 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, and then Expert Hider makes it so that if any damage would be done to the Kecleon, you flip a coin. If heads, you prevent that damage. So you go through the game, spread damage with Spinda and Kecleon early game, going with Braviary and Iron Jugulus late game, and then use Ditto where necessary to copy your other attackers. This list still plays Snorlax, still plays Fan Rotom, just both insane cards. And then it runs Squivit, Bibarel, Oranguru engine. That's like the most common engine that Colorless will run just because it's so consistent. And then Ursaluna Control uses the Pete Hunt, 180 HP Ursaluna, attach a Luxurious Cape, and you can use Pete Hunt to get back triple acceleration energy, which will pay for Pete Hunt, and then Max Potion, which will discard all energy on the Ursaluna and heal all the damage on it. So now your opponent has to KO the 280 HP threat that is sitting in front of them, or it will just remove all the damage that you just put on it. And then you play Delcatty with Search for Friends to get supporters back, keep looping resources and disrupting your opponent. Pidgeotto as just consistent draw that doesn't rely on the amount of cards you have in your hand, so you can build a bigger hand. Cinccino is also in here, so you can keep building your big hand. And then Dunsparce with the Mysterious Nest makes it so your colorless Pokemon in play have no weakness, making it so that your 280 HP Ursaluna now can't be easily OHKO'd by a single fighting Pokemon. So the fighting matchup becomes a lot easier. Bunnelby's in here too, loop some resources. And then links in the description, all the deck lists showed in the video, the official Gym Leader Challenge website and the ban list, and then the Cardboard Warriors website, which is a great place to go and find more deck lists or even make your own. Thanks for watching.